It all started with the first snow. It's strange how you don't notice important things until they've already passed. So when I saw a set of footprints leading halfway into my yard and none going out, I ignored it. Sure, it was weird, but what did it matter? Some random guy might have been interested in my paint or something. To me it was a passing thing, literally. Nothing happened for a while. The snow began to melt, and soon there wasn't any sign of the prints, just the bitter cold. But sometimes I would feel like I was being watched. Occasionally I would misplace something, unable to find it. This was logical, however. I lived alone. Getting the heebie-jeebies happened and I was something of idiots. Losing stuff was nothing out of the normal for me. 2 weeks ago, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked at it and didn't see it anymore. I felt scared, and I picked up a bat I kept near my couch. I turned on my lights and looked around. Nothing there, and I went down the hall and checked my room and my office. Nothing. I sighed in relief and let my bat fall. I walked back out to my living room and set the bat down. I sat back on my couch and relaxed. As much as I could at least. I still felt deeply unnerved. A day after that, there was a string of burglaries in my neighborhood. Like a raging fire, 20 separate people were robbed. 10 more were left dead. Have you ever felt so completely terrified you couldn't talk? I was after that. Not just because 10 people nearby me were killed, but when one of the robbers was caught he was asked why certain houses weren't selected. No families were robbed. I was spared because the gang had seen a figure. An 8-foot-tall figure, with an unnatural smile in my window. I bought multiple guns that day. One for each room, and a rifle and a shotgun. I went through the entirety of my house with that shotgun. Nothing there. I checked the crawl space and the attic. Nothing there. 1 week later, I came home from work to find my front door open. I grabbed the gun I hid by my door and made sure it was loaded. I heard something in the kitchen and ran into the room. I nearly shot the gun when I rounded the corner, but nothing was there. I left the house with my gun in hand and called the police. Every door was opened, and every cabinet was open, every window was open. There was a single plate broken in the kitchen. There was no sign of breaking and entering. The police officer that was sent out there said, "Looks more like something was trying to break out." He also said off the record that a similar incident had happened to a friend, and that it had ended when he had a pastor come out and bless the house. I took the officer's advice with a grain of salt. It couldn't be something religious, right? If I was so paranoid as to proclaim it the work of a big boogeyman in the sky, I just needed some air, or maybe some meds. I booked a hotel room, brought my Xbox and called a pastor to bless my house. So what if I had a guy go into my house to fix what could have been my own mind's fallacies? It could bring peace to my stressful state. I had a good night. No strange things, a hotel hot tub and an unhealthy amount of gaming. So when checkout time came, I merrily walked out and tried to call the pastor. He didn't respond. I ignored it. He was probably tired, or doing stuff that pastors do. Dread is something that starts small. Oh, so tiny that kernel is, and you ignore it. But when you ignore it, dread will grow. So it grows and suffocates all of your other thoughts one by one. I walked into my home to find nothing different than when I left. I tried the pastor again, and again there was no reply. With all of a Saturday ahead of me, I decided to hit town with some friends. I had a great time, but it was there in the back of my mind. Dread. I ignored it though, pretending that nothing was there. At 11 p.m. when I came home, nothing was there. I had tried the pastor several times throughout the day, but he hadn't ever returned my calls. I lay down and began to drift off to sleep when I smelled a smoky, earthy aroma. Burning sage. I sat up and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. I heard humming. I grabbed the shotgun, but before I could even get out of bed there was a thump. I turned every light on. Nothing was there. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to a waking dream. I woke up the next morning to a weight in my bed, like someone was beside me. I nearly shat myself then, but fortunately my hand was close to the knife I left under my pillow. Screaming, I grabbed it and stabbed the bed next to me. But nothing was there, just me sweating and a knife sticking out of my bed. I felt like I was going insane. But I figured it had to be another waking dream. Nothing happened the next day. At least in my home. The pastor I had called was found 20 miles away, mangled and murdered. He must have never reached my house. I still felt guilty though. The police came by the next day. I was one of the last people he had talked to, so it made sense. I was spared explaining my guns left out by my location, thankfully. The police and the people here were still very wary after the robberies. The next 3 days were calm. I was still a nervous wreck in my own home, but nothing out of the ordinary occurred. Until tonight. I woke up half dazed and hearing voices. It took a moment to register, But it was the same conversation I had with the two detectives. I wondered what they were doing in my house until I heard my own voice. I have had enough. I picked up my shotgun, checked it was chambered and decided not to alert anyone by turning on the light. I crept to my living room and saw a figure. I shot it in the back from 5 feet away with a buck slug. An unearthly screech came from it and it disappeared. There's nothing there. I muttered in disbelief as I turned on the light. There was no bullet hole in my wall either, so I knew I wasn't that crazy. Hoped would be a better word, but nevertheless, I called the police and explained the situation. It was a carbon copy of the last time I called the police. The same cop came out, and another plate was found broken on my kitchen floor. I'm at a hotel now. I packed a bag for about a week, brought a gun and my Xbox. I was playing Rainbow Six Siege when the power cut out. Only in my building. It was probably just some faulty wiring. Not like I could leave anyway. The lock on my door was entirely electric. What has inspired me to detail this, however, is that for the last 5 minutes, there has been something walking up and down my hallway. With every round it takes down the hall, one of my neighbors lets out a blood-curdling scream. I think they're dead. The only thing that makes it worse, is that in a perfect imitation of me I can hear it saying there's nothing there. Roughly 29 hours ago, I made a post detailing the strange events of the last 2 weeks that had happened in my home. As I typed the last sentence, another one of my neighbors cried out. I remembered there was only 18 rooms in each hall wing. It has persistently stayed in my wing, and had gone through the wing over a dozen times. It seemed to be picking which room it entered at random, and at best I had maybe 5 minutes before I was dead. I was panicking already. That realization nearly knocked me out. I struggled to stay as quiet as I tried to think of a way out. I was on the 3rd story, so jumping out of my window was a very bad idea. I would be injured too badly. I heard another screams of another of my neighbors dying and the thing mockingly shout, "There's nothing there." In my voice. I looked out the window and changed my mind. I could angle my fall so that I landed in the pool. I went and grabbed some gallon Ziploc bags from my go bag. I triple layered my phone, portable charger, wallet, and my gun. I heard the footsteps of the creature in the room right next to me as I struggled to get the window open. I heard it again say in my voice, "There's nothing there." I could still hear the footsteps as the bottom part of my window loudly popped open. I looked back before I jumped to see it in my room. It was massive, its grin looked like something out of some creepypasta art, and it was somehow darker than the pitch-black darkness I was surrounded by. It's strange what desperation can do for someone's nerves. I heard the thing scream as I rose from the pool. It, for whatever reason, wouldn't leave the darkness of the hotel. I hopped the fence and staggered out to my car. Every part of my body hurt. I got to my car and checked my bag. I forgot my fucking keys. Of all the things to forget. It didn't matter much, however, as a SWAT van rolled into the parking lot. 28 hours ago, I was admitted into the police station. It was for questioning, thankfully, but my gun was taken. I did see a familiar face though, the officer who had been out to my house standing in the lobby. He waved to me as I was led off to the interrogation room. How do you explain that paranormal activity followed you from home and slaughtered people before disappearing with no trace? I don't know, and the detectives told me to stop fucking around when I tried to explain it. I told them to bring in the police officer in the lobby. He did back my statement up, but the detective stated, "No crime in this city has ever been due to supernatural activity. As the only person to survive this attack, I would have hoped you would provide information to bring in your attacker." Then the lights went out. Rolling blackouts in California are just wonderful, aren't they? At first I was mildly bothered by the blackout. The very least this visit to the cops should have gotten me was a crappy coffee. Instead I heard my voice, again. "There's nothing there," one of the detectives bewilderedly asked how I had done that. The fact that no crime in this town had ever been caused by supernatural activity didn't stop that thing from slaughtering them. I snatched a gun and a set of keys from the officer and bolted as I heard their screams pierce the night. 27 hours ago, I realized I was a coward. How could I let all those people die for me? I screamed at the top of my lungs in that police car I had stolen. I have never regretted anything more than shooting that thing in my living room. It took me driving past a nightclub to realize that the power was out in over half the town. I parked the car some distance away, left my things in the glove box and went into that nightclub. I don't remember the rest of the night, and I wish I could forget what came before my drunkenness. 15 hours ago, I woke up in a filthy alley. My body hurt even worse than before, which was understandable, seeing as how I had yeeted myself out a window last night, and then got shit-faced and passed out in an alley. As I got up I saw a used condom on the ground by me. I prayed I had nothing to do with that and went back to my car. I tried to rub my temples to be rid of my headache and then I drove off. My first stop was IHOP. The day was uneventful. I bought new clothes, and checked my bank account. I had enough to get a used car, which was very good. I needed to ditch the stolen police cruiser I was riding around town in. After I got the new car I checked around online. I was, to say the least, a very hot topic. Seeing as how 56 people had died because of my stalker, it made sense, but also seeing as how no one knew about the stalker, I was the prime suspect. As I left town I made a realization. My stalker did not like light. Nothing ever happened when you could see it. It must not like being seen. Or shot, but that's besides the point. I was driving to Reno. I figured that a steady electricity supply would probably be a good step one to escaping the stalker. I stopped at a roadside diner for some sustenance and to scour the interwebs for an answer. The few I could find all required trained holy men, who weren't of Catholic or Christian faith. 1 hour ago, my anxiety spiked. The stupid sun had gone down at 5, like it does at this time of year. As I kept driving it got darker and darker, and the lights got further and further away from each other. Everything was fine, until I felt like I was being watched. I drove on, but I feared that I would encounter the stalker again. Surely I had escaped it, right? I had left it in Sacramento and driven miles away, it couldn't have found me. I'm at the top of Donner Pass now. I wrecked my car when I looked in the rearview mirror and saw it, just staring at me. Now, the only fortune I have is that I was launched out of my car when I hit a tree, right into the nearest streetlight. I have my gun, but the woods are dead silent, spare for the footsteps of my stalker circling around me, as if waiting for the light to go out.